The rain came down hard over the skeletal remains of old Seattle, turning the cracked pavement into mirrors that reflected nothing but gray clouds and broken dreams. Torin Ashwood sat beneath a collapsed overpass, his jacket pulled tight against the October cold, watching the water cascade off rusted metal beams like tears from the city's forgotten bones. At 19, he had learned that survival meant moving light, trusting no one, and never looking up long enough to remember what hope felt like. He had no family, no home, just a canvas backpack stuffed with salvaged clothes, a water bottle, and a knife he had traded for 3 days ago. The streets had raised him after the plague took his parents when he was 12. Since then, every doorway, every abandoned building, every soup kitchen line had become his temporary refuge. Tonight's shelter was this overpass, and tomorrow he would move again, always drifting, always invisible. The sound came first, a deep rumble that shook the ground beneath him. Torin looked up, his heart suddenly hammering against his ribs. Through the rain, he saw something impossible. A streak of blue fire tearing across the sky, growing larger, closer, screaming through the atmosphere with a fury that made the clouds part in terror. It was not a meteor. The way it moved, banking sharply to the left, then correcting its trajectory, spoke of something controlled, something alive. The object slammed into the industrial district 3 miles north, and the impact sent a shockwave rolling through the city that rattled windows and set off car alarms in a cascading symphony of panic. Torin stood frozen, his breath coming in quick bursts. Every rational part of his brain told him to run the other way, to disappear into the maze of alleys he knew so well. But something else, something he had thought the streets had beaten out of him long ago, pulled him forward. Curiosity, wonder, the desperate need to know that something beyond his small, hungry existence was real. He ran through the rain, his worn sneakers splashing through puddles, his lungs burning with the effort. The industrial district was a graveyard of factories that had closed decades ago, their windows shattered, their walls covered in graffiti and rust. Torin navigated the chain-link fences and piles of debris with the ease of someone who had spent years learning the city's hidden paths. As he drew closer, he could see smoke rising from behind a collapsed warehouse, glowing faintly with an otherworldly blue light. When he finally reached the crash site, his breath caught in his throat. A vessel, sleek and organic-looking, lay half-buried in the concrete. It was no larger than a car, its surface covered in intricate patterns that seemed to pulse with fading energy. Parts of it were cracked open, revealing a soft luminescence from within. The air around it hummed with static electricity, making the hair on Torin's arms stand on end. He approached slowly, his heart pounding so hard he could feel it in his temples. That was when he saw her. Small, impossibly small, lying crumpled near the wreckage. At first, Torin thought she was a child, but as he knelt beside her, he realized nothing about her was human. Her skin held a faint iridescent quality, shifting between pale lavender and silver in the dim light. Her hair was long and white, almost glowing, and her features were delicate, with large eyes that remained closed. She stood perhaps 4 feet tall, her frame slender and fragile-looking. She wore what appeared to be a flight suit made of material that shimmered like liquid mercury. Torin reached out with a trembling hand and gently touched her shoulder. She was warm, and he could feel the faint rise and fall of her breathing. Relief flooded through him. She was alive. Without thinking, acting purely on instinct, he carefully gathered her into his arms. She weighed almost nothing, like holding a bird. Her head lolled against his chest, and he could feel her heartbeat, rapid and irregular, fluttering like wings against a cage. He had to get her somewhere safe. The crash had been loud, and soon this place would be swarming with police, military, maybe worse. Torin knew a place an old maintenance tunnel system beneath the city that the homeless used during the worst winter months. It was dry, hidden, and most importantly, forgotten by the world above. He cradled the alien girl close and began to run, retracing his steps through the rain-soaked streets. The tunnel entrance was hidden behind a dumpster in an alley off 4th Street. Torin squeezed through the gap, carefully protecting his precious cargo, and descended the metal ladder into darkness. The tunnels smelled of mold and stagnant water, but they were warm from the steam pipes that ran along the ceiling. He had a small camp set up in one of the side chambers, just a sleeping bag, some candles, and a few books he had salvaged. He laid the girl down gently on the sleeping bag and lit 3 candles, their flames casting dancing shadows on the concrete walls. Now, in the flickering light, he could see her more clearly. Her face was peaceful despite whatever trauma she had endured. Small cuts marked her arms and face, and a thin line of silver blood, not red, traced down from her temple. Torin wet a piece of cloth from his water bottle and carefully began to clean her wounds. As he worked, her eyes suddenly opened. They were enormous, taking up much of her face, and they were the color of deep space, purple and black with flecks of stars that seemed to actually move within them. She gasped and tried to sit up, panic flooding her expression. Torin raised his hands, palms out, trying to show he meant no harm. For a long moment they stared at each other, 2 beings from different worlds, separated by everything except this one fragile moment of connection. Then, slowly, her breathing calmed. She looked at him, really looked at him, and something in those cosmic eyes softened. She reached up with one small hand and placed it against his chest, right over his heart, and spoke a single word in a voice like wind chimes. He did not understand the language, but somehow he understood the meaning. "Thank you." Torin smiled, a real smile, perhaps the first genuine one in years. He pointed to himself and said his name slowly, "Torin." Then he pointed to her, raising his eyebrows in question. She seemed to understand. Her lips curved into something that might have been a smile, and she touched her own chest. "Vellyn." Her voice was soft, musical, like nothing he had ever heard. "Vellyn," he repeated it, and her smile grew wider. In that moment, sitting in a forgotten tunnel beneath a dying city, Torin Ashwood stopped being invisible. For the first time since he could remember, someone saw him. And he saw her, not as something alien or strange, but as someone who needed help, someone who was lost and scared, just like him. He did not know it then, but his life had just changed forever. Above them, sirens began to wail, and the hunt for the fallen star had begun. The first night passed in careful silence. Torin watched over Vellyn as she drifted in and out of consciousness, her breathing sometimes shallow, sometimes deep and steady. He used his limited supplies to make her as comfortable as possible, draping his only jacket over her small frame when she shivered. The candles burned low, casting their shadows against the tunnel walls like ancient cave paintings, telling stories of impossible meetings. When dawn broke somewhere above them, filtering down through the grates in thin shafts of gray light, Vellyn finally woke fully. She sat up slowly, her enormous star-filled eyes scanning the chamber with a mixture of wonder and wariness. Torin had been dozing against the wall, but her movement brought him instantly alert. They looked at each other across the small space, and he saw something in her expression that made his chest tighten. She was terrified. Torin moved slowly, deliberately, showing her his empty hands. He pulled out a protein bar from his backpack, one of only 3 he had left, and offered it to her. Vellyn tilted her head, studying the wrapped food with curiosity. He unwrapped it and took a small bite, then held it out again. Understanding flickered across her face, and she reached out tentatively, her fingers brushing his as she took the bar. The touch sent a strange warmth through his hand. Not unpleasant, just different, like touching something alive with its own gentle energy. She nibbled at the bar carefully, and her eyes widened. Whatever her people ate, apparently protein bars were acceptable. While she ate, Torin tried to communicate using gestures and simple words. He pointed to things and named them: candle, water, tunnel, wall. Vellyn watched him intently, and then she began to do the same, touching objects and speaking words in her language. Her voice was melodic, each word seeming to carry multiple tones at once, harmonizing with itself. Hours passed like this, the two of them building a fragile bridge of understanding. Torin learned that Vellyn was not just scared, she was desperate. Through gestures and drawings in the dust on the floor, she showed him a ship, her ship damaged and pursued. She had fled from something, crashed here by accident rather than choice. When she drew the pursuers, her hand shook. They looked human in her sketches, but she marked them with symbols that conveyed danger, violence, hunting dot above ground. The city had exploded into chaos. Torin ventured out once during the day, keeping his hood up and his head down, moving through the crowds like the ghost he had always been. Every screen, every phone, every conversation buzzed with the same thing. Alien spacecraft crashed in Seattle. Military lockdown. Mandatory searches. Reward for information. His stomach twisted as he passed soldiers on street corners, their rifles held ready, their eyes scanning every face. He bought bread and fruit with the few dollars he had panhandled, then disappeared back underground. When he returned to the tunnel, Vellyn's face lit up in a way that made something warm bloom in his chest. She had been waiting for him, worried he might not return. The realization hit him hard. Someone cared if he came back. Someone would notice if he disappeared. The feeling was so foreign, he almost did not recognize it. That evening, as they shared the food, Vellyn began to teach him words from her language. She would point to herself and say something that sounded like music, then point to him and wait. Torin repeated the sounds as best he could, his human tongue struggling with the harmonics. When he got it right, her smile was radiant, transforming her delicate features into something breathtaking. He found himself working harder to make her smile again, to hear her laugh, which sounded like bells in wind. 3 days passed in their underground sanctuary. Torin ventured out only when necessary, bringing back food, news, and growing dread. The military presence had intensified. They were searching buildings systematically, block by block, moving closer to their location. Captain Helena Cross, a stern-faced officer with ice in her eyes, appeared on every news broadcast, declaring that the alien was dangerous, a threat to national security, and must be captured at any cost. During those 3 days, something shifted between Torin and Vellyn. It started with small things. The way she would reach for his hand when loud noises from above startled her. The way he would wake to find her curled against his side, seeking warmth and safety. The way their eyes would meet across the candlelight and hold for moments that stretched into infinity. Communication became easier as they learned each other's languages, mixing words from both into something uniquely theirs. On the 4th night, Vellyn spoke more clearly than she ever had, her English broken but understandable. She told him about Thessara, her home world, a place of crystalline cities and singing forests, where the sky held 3 moons and the oceans glowed with bioluminescent life. She told him about her family, scientists and explorers, who had sent her on a research mission to study developing worlds. She told him about the attack, human ships that had intercepted her vessel near Earth's orbit, trying to capture her for study, for weapons, for secrets her technology could provide. Her voice broke when she explained that her ship's emergency protocol had crashed her here, far from the rendezvous point where her people would look for her. She was stranded, alone, hunted. Tears formed in her cosmic eyes, silver like her blood, and Torin did something he had not done in years. He reached out and pulled her into an embrace. She was so small in his arms, trembling like a frightened bird, and he felt a fierce protectiveness surge through him. Vellyn pulled back slightly, looking up at him with those impossible eyes, and whispered 3 words in English that changed everything. "I trust you." Then she added something in her own language, and though he did not know the exact translation, he understood the meaning in the way she touched his face, her small hand gentle against his rough, unshaven cheek. The moment hung between them, fragile and perfect, and Torin leaned down slowly, giving her every chance to pull away. She did not. Their lips met in a kiss that was soft, tentative, and impossibly sweet. It lasted only a heartbeat, but when they parted, both were breathing differently. Vellyn's hand remained on his face, and she smiled, a real smile full of wonder and something that might have been joy. Torin felt something crack open inside his chest. Some wall he had built years ago to survive the streets, crumbling into dust. That night they slept tangled together, her head resting over his heart, his arms wrapped protectively around her. For the first time since his parents died, Torin felt like he belonged somewhere, to someone. And Vellyn, millions of miles from home, found a new kind of home in the heartbeat beneath her ear. But peace never lasts for the hunted. On the 5th morning, Torin woke to the sound of boots echoing through the tunnels. Heavy, military boots, dozens of them, moving systematically, searching. He shook Vellyn awake gently, pressing a finger to his lips. Her eyes went wide with understanding and fear. They had been found. Captain Helena Cross's voice boomed through a megaphone, distorted by the tunnel acoustics. "We know you are down here. Surrender the alien, and you will not be harmed. Resist, and you will be treated as an enemy combatant." Torin looked at Vellyn, at this beautiful, impossible being who had stumbled into his life and made him feel human again, made him feel seen. He thought about handing her over, about the reward money, about maybe finally getting off the streets. The thoughts lasted less than a second before shame burned them away. He would die before he let them take her, before he let them turn her into a lab specimen or a weapon or whatever nightmares they had planned. He grabbed her hand and pulled her deeper into the tunnels, into sections he had explored months ago. The boots followed, closer now, flashlights cutting through the darkness. Torin's mind raced. There was an old service exit that led to the waterfront, a grate that opened near the docks. If they could reach it, maybe they could disappear into the industrial port, lose themselves in the maze of shipping containers and warehouses. They ran through the darkness, Vellyn keeping pace despite her smaller stride, trusting him completely. Behind them, orders were shouted, lights swept closer. Torin's lungs burned, his legs ached, but he did not stop. They burst through the service exit onto the waterfront, just as dawn broke over Elliott Bay, painting the water gold and pink. For one beautiful moment, they stood together, breathing hard, hands clasped, looking at Freedom Dot, and the soldiers poured out behind them, rifles raised, red laser sights painting dots across Torin's chest and back. Captain Helena Cross emerged from the tunnel, her face hard, her weapon trained on them. "End of the line," she said coldly. "Step away from the alien boy. Last chance." Torin pulled Vellyn behind him, shielding her with his body. He looked at the captain, at the 24 soldiers, at the impossible odds, and he smiled. A real smile, fierce and unafraid. "No," he said simply. His voice did not shake. The standoff on the waterfront stretched like a held breath. Captain Helena Cross studied Torin with cold calculation, her finger resting against the trigger guard. 24 rifles remained trained on the homeless boy and the alien girl he protected. The morning sun climbed higher, casting long shadows across the concrete dock. turning the scene into something from a painting, beautiful and terrible at once. "You do not understand what you are protecting," Cross said, her voice carrying across the space between them. "That thing is not some lost child. It is an alien entity. Its technology could revolutionize or destroy our world. We need to study it, understand it, control it. You are throwing your life away for something that is not even human." Torin felt Vellyn's hand tighten in his, felt her small frame pressed against his back, trembling. He thought about the past 5 days, about the way she had looked at him with trust and wonder, about the gentleness in her touch, about the kiss they had shared. He thought about all the years he had spent invisible, worthless, just another piece of human trash the world had thrown away. And he thought about how she had seen him, really seen him, as something valuable, as someone worth saving. "She is more human than you are," Torin said quietly. His words carried in the still morning air, and he saw several soldiers shift uncomfortably. "You hunt her because you are afraid. You want to cage her because you cannot understand her. But I have seen her cry. I have heard her laugh. I have felt her fear and her hope. She is not a thing, Captain. She is a person. And I will not let you take her." Cross's eyes narrowed. "Touching speech, boy. But sentiment does not change reality. You have 3 seconds to comply. 3. Torin did not move. 2. He felt Vellyn shift behind him. Heard her whisper something in her language. Urgent and pleading. 1. The captain's finger moved to the trigger. Stop. The voice came from Vellyn. Clear and strong. Her English perfect despite the accent. She stepped out from behind Torin, and he grabbed for her, but she gently pushed his hand away. "I will go with you," she said, looking directly at Captain Cross, "but you must promise to leave Torin alone. He saved my life. He protected me when I was helpless. He showed me kindness in a world that has shown him none. If you have any honor, any decency, you will let him go free." Cross lowered her weapon slightly, surprised by the alien's eloquence. "You bargained for a homeless nobody? You could negotiate for anything. Technology, safe passage home, protection. Instead you wasted on him?" Her tone made it clear what she thought Torin was worth. Nothing. Vellyn's eyes blazed with an inner light that made several soldiers step back. "He is not nothing," she said fiercely. "He is everything. In 5 days, he has shown me more humanity than your entire military complex. He gave me his food when he was hungry. He gave me his warmth when he was cold. He gave me hope when I had none. You call me alien, but you are the ones who are foreign to compassion, to love, to everything that makes life worth living." The word love hung in the air like a bell that had been struck. Torin's heart stopped, then started again, faster. He looked at Vellyn, at her profile as she faced down an army, defending him, and he understood with perfect clarity that she meant it. This impossible, beautiful being from across the stars loved him. Him, a street kid with nothing to offer, nowhere to go, no future to promise. And the realization that followed was just as powerful. He loved her too. "I am not going anywhere without her," Torin said, stepping forward to stand beside Vellyn. Their hands found each other automatically, fingers interlacing. "If you take her, you take me too. If you shoot her, you will have to shoot through me first. I am done being invisible. I am done letting the world tell me I do not matter. She matters to me, and I matter to her, and that is enough." Captain Cross stared at them, her weapon wavering. Around her, soldiers exchanged glances. Some looked uncomfortable, others confused. A few seemed almost moved. This was not the mission they had trained for. This was not the enemy they had been told to expect. This was 2 young people, from different worlds, holding hands and choosing each other over safety, over survival, over everything. For a long moment, Nothing happened. Then, from behind the military line, a voice spoke. "Stand down, Captain." The soldiers parted, and an older man in a different uniform stepped forward. His insignia marked him as someone high-ranking, someone with authority that even Captain Cross had to respect. General Marcus Webb, Torin would later learn. Head of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, a man who had seen too many wars and too much death to stomach one more pointless tragedy. The general approached slowly, holstering his sidearm in a deliberate gesture of peace. He stopped a few feet from Torin and Vellyn, studying them with eyes that had witnessed history being made and unmade. "You remind me of someone," he said quietly to Torin, "my son. He died 3 years ago, homeless, alone, overdosed in an alley. I did not find out until weeks later because I was too busy fighting wars and saving the world to notice. He needed saving." The general turned to Vellyn. "And you remind me that we are not alone in this universe, and that maybe, just maybe, the first contact we make should not be at gunpoint." He looked back at Captain Cross. "Stand down," he repeated, his voice firm. "That is an order. We are not going to be the species that greets a visitor to our world by hunting them, like an animal." Cross's face flushed with anger. "Sir, the security risk alone is unacceptable. We have protocols and procedures designed exactly for this situation. If we let them go, we lose control of the technology, the information, the strategic advantage this represents. We cannot afford to be weak when the stakes are this high." The general smiled sadly. "Weakness is thinking that compassion has no place in strategy, Captain. Weakness is letting fear dictate our choices. These 2 young people have shown more courage in 5 days than we have, shown in decades of military posturing." He turned back to Torin and Vellyn. "I cannot promise you will not face questions, scrutiny, challenges. The world has changed now that we know we are not alone, and that change will be difficult. But you have earned the right to face it together, on your own terms, not as prisoner and captor." He extended his hand. "My name is Marcus Webb. I would like to help you, if you will let me." Torin looked at the offered hand, then at Vellyn. She nodded, a small smile touching her lips. Together, they stepped forward, and Torin shook the general's hand. The gesture was simple, but it meant everything: recognition, respect, a chance. Around them, soldiers lowered their weapons. The tension bleeding out of the morning air, like water from a broken dam. Captain Cross stood frozen, her weapon still raised, her face a mask of fury and disbelief. "This is a mistake," she hissed. "You are making a mistake that will cost us everything." The general met her eyes. "Perhaps, but some mistakes are worth making if the alternative is losing our humanity. Lower your weapon, Captain." That is a direct order. For a moment, it seemed she might refuse, might pull the trigger anyway. Then slowly, she lowered the rifle and stepped back, her eyes promising that this was not over. The next weeks were a whirlwind. General Webb arranged for Torin and Vellyn to be housed in a secure but comfortable facility, more a protected embassy than a prison. Scientists and diplomats came to speak with Vellyn, fascinated by her knowledge and technology, but Webb enforced strict rules. She was a guest, not a specimen. She would share what she wished, when she wished, and always with Torin by her side. Vellyn taught them about Thessara, about the Galactic Council of Peaceful Species that humanity did not yet know existed, about technologies that could heal diseases and clean oceans and reach distant stars. But more than that, she taught them about compassion across differences, about seeing the person inside the alien skin, about building bridges instead of walls. And Torin, the homeless boy who society had written off as worthless, became her translator, her protector, her advocate, and her love. He learned her language fluently, his mind sharp and hungry for knowledge when given the chance. He spoke to world leaders and scientists with the same fearlessness he had shown on the docks, defending her, explaining her, making them understand. 6 months after the crash, Vellyn's people finally made contact. A ship appeared in orbit, beautiful and impossible, come to retrieve their lost explorer. The world held its breath. Would this be invasion? War? The end of everything? Instead, it was a reunion. Vellyn's family descended in a smaller craft, and the images broadcast around the world showed something no one expected: tears, laughter, embraces, love that looked the same whether skin was brown or silver, whether eyes held irises or stars. Vellyn's mother, tall and regal, embraced Torin and called him savior in her musical language. Her father, a scientist with kind eyes, thanked him for protecting their daughter. And when they asked Vellyn if she was ready to come home, she looked at Torin with those cosmic eyes and said something that stopped time. "I am home. He is my home. Wherever he is, that is where I belong." The choice was offered then. Torin could stay on Earth, and Vellyn would remain with him. Or they could both go to Thessara together and begin a new life among the stars. General Webb stood with them on the landing pad as they made their decision. "Whatever you choose," he said gently, "you have already changed the world. You have shown us that love is the universal language, that kindness transcends species, that we are stronger together than apart." Torin looked at Earth, at the blue sky and gray city, at the world that had given him nothing but hunger and cold and loneliness for 19 years. Then he looked at Vellyn, at her hand in his, at the smile that promised him everything. The choice was not difficult. They boarded the ship together, watched Earth grow smaller through the viewport, and flew toward a future written in starlight. Years later, they would return as ambassadors, building the bridges between worlds that their love had first proven possible. But that night, as they crossed the space between planets, Torin held Vellyn close and whispered against her hair, "Thank you for seeing me, for making me matter." She looked up at him, her eyes full of stars and love, and whispered back, "Thank you for teaching me that home is not a place. It is a person. It is you." And somewhere below, on a wet Seattle street, a homeless kid slept under an overpass, dreaming of impossible things, dreaming that maybe, someday, someone would see them too. The universe was vast and strange and full of wonders. But the greatest wonder of all was simple: love. Love that could cross galaxies. Love that could transform the worthless into the priceless. Love that could change everything with a single act of kindness. Torin and Vellyn had found it in each other, and in doing so, they had shown two worlds that anything was possible when hearts chose to see past differences and embrace what was shared: hope, trust, and the eternal truth that we are all, every one of us, worth saving.